الحمد لله وكفى وسلام على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد فأعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الذين ينادونك من وراء الحجرات أكثرهم لا يعقلون ولو أنهم صبروا حتى تخرج إليهم لكان خيرا لهم والله غفور رحيم يا أيها الذين آمنوا إن جاءكم فاسق بنبأ فتبينوا أن تصيبوا قوما بجهالة فتصبحوا على ما فعلتم نادمين صدق الله العظيم. Respected elders, dear brothers and sisters, the ahkam, laws and rules that are mentioned within Surah Al-Hujurat, the opening verses, first few ayat, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs the believers, us mu'mineen and believers, that we should never put ourselves before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and before Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. This is a matter of preference. We have gone over the details of this verse. In the second ayah and third ayah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala instructs the believers that they should not raise their voice above the voice of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Among the many meanings of these ayat is also that whenever a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam is mentioned in our presence, we should listen very attentively and we should be very, very respectful to the words of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us of the qualities of the mu'mineen and believers in Surah Al-Furqan. In many places in the Quran, qualities are mentioned, but in Surah Al-Furqan, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala mentioned that one of the qualities of the Ibadur Rahman, one of the qualities of the servants of Ar-Rahman, the sincere servants of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, sincere slaves of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, is also وَالَّذِينَ إِذَا ذُكِّرُوا بِآيَاتِ رَبِّهِمْ لَمْ يَخِرُّوا عَلَيْهَا صُمًّا وَعُمْيَانًا. Whenever the ayat of their Rabb are mentioned in their presence, the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or the ahkam of deen, and they do not pass over them or just let them pass in a way where they make themselves as if they are deaf or they are blind. They do not become so heedless as if they didn't hear the ayat of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala or they didn't see the sign of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And this also applies to the ahkam of deen, and also the scholars of our deen, the ulama, they've told us that we should also give due importance to the ahadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that when a hadith is mentioned in front of us, we should not act as if we are deaf or we are blind and we do not listen. Should be very, very respectful. Amongst the Sahaba, there were some Sahaba, particularly there was one Sahabi whose natural voice was very loud. He had a naturally loud voice. So when the second verse of Surah Al-Hujurat was revealed, so he started avoiding being around Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. He almost stopped coming, or at least around the Salah time, he would just come for the Salah, immediately leave. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam inquired about him. And when the Sahabi was brought to that Sahabi in a very low voice, in a very humble voice, he said that this is the ayah that has been revealed. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in this ayah that if our voice goes above your voice, he was addressing Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, that if our voice goes over your voice, and we have that warning that it will nullify our a'mal. That our voices, we should not raise our voice above your voice. أَن تَحْبَطَ أَعْمَالُكُمْ وَأَنْتُمْ لَا تَشْعُرُونَ. This may nullify your a'mal, your righteous deeds, you won't even realize it. So the Sahabi, in a very low tone, in a very humble way, he said that I have a naturally loud voice. I can't even control it. Sometimes you're speaking and my voice is louder than your voice. That is why I started avoiding coming. So then Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam recited for him the next verse, which is verse number 3 of Surah Al-Hujurat. إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يَغُضُّونَ أَصْوَاتَهُمْ عِنْدَ رَسُولِ اللَّهِ أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ امْتَحَنَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُمْ لِلتَّقْوَى. That for those who humble their voices in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, أُولَٰئِكَ الَّذِينَ امْتَحَنَ اللَّهُ قُلُوبَهُمْ لِلتَّقْوَى. They are those who Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has tested them, or has tested their hearts for taqwa, which means that these are the sincere Sahaba, the sincere companions, and that they are making utmost effort not to violate any hukum of the deen. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, لَهُمْ مَغْفِرَةٌ وَأَجْرٌ عَظِيمٌ. For them will be forgiveness and a very, very great reward. So the Sahabi, he, in the presence of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, used to most of the time remain silent, or even if he had to say something, he used to say it in a very low tone, in a very low voice. So this is what is character that we have to learn, the Akhlaq that we have to learn, that in the presence of our scholars, in the presence of our elders, we have to check our voice, we have to check our tone. We should be very humble in their presence. We should not shout in their presence. These are things that are not recommended. In fact, they are something that we have been given very stern warning about. In the next ayah, ayat number 4, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُنَادُونَكَ مِنْ وَرَاءِ الْحُجُرَاتِ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. There was an incident that happened where there were a few Bedouins that came from there were nomads, there were Bedouins, they came to visit Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. They also had some questions for him. And the nature of the Bedouins is that by nature, they were known to be kind of rude in their character. It's not that they meant it, but in the system that they were raised in such a system where it made them a bit harsh in their system of life. They were very blunt at times, they were very bold at times. And they used to have kind of they were very simple Bedouins. Many of them were very harsh in their nature. So throughout the Quran, in a few places, there are certain events that are mentioned about these Bedouins. And some of these incidents that are mentioned about them just shows the kind of nature that they had. For those who may have ever been familiar with being around people who are from the deserts or from the mountains, those that are not very much in the society or they have a different kind of culture. The Bedouins, they are a very, very different type of culture. And if you try to be around them, sometimes you feel that they may be rude, or that they're loud, or that they're kind of careless. A person may feel this, but for them, it's not that they mean to be rude. They do not mean to. It's actually many a times the opposite. They're very, very hospitable, very, very kind. Once you get to know them and you get to understand their culture, you realize how hospitable they are, how nice they are, how kind they are. But it's just their nature that people from the outside who don't know their culture sometimes think that they're very rude, or that they're very bold and loud. So in quite a few places there are certain things mentioned about them, and this is kind of for us mu'mineen and believers. These things are mentioned for us so that we do not become judgmental. We as mu'mineen, as believers, we should never be judgmental if we do not have proof. We should not have suspicions. Those ayat are coming again. Later on in Surah Al-Hujurat, inshallah, we'll get to them. But as believers, we should never become judgmental of people. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, in a few places in the Quran, has also mentioned some of their actions, and then has given a certain reason or a kind of hukum related to how they should have acted. So that we mu'mineen and believers may realize if somebody acts in such a way, we should not become judgmental of them. Rather, we should understand that they come from a different kind of culture, and we should be understanding. So there were some Bedouins that came to visit Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he had hujurat, kind of rooms that he used to spend time. His family would live in these rooms. They were simple. It was kind of a house, but the whole house was just one room. Very, very simple life. These houses were also attached to the Masjid. To Masjid al-Nabawi, there's places are there even till today. There were places that are designated that this was the house of Mu'mineen Aisha Siddiqa radiallahu anha, and then this was the house of all the Ummahat al-Mu'mineen. Their rooms were there. So it so happened that Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was resting. It was the time of Qaydula, which is the midday, the Zawal, when the sun is in the middle of the day. That is a time, a sunnah time of Qaydula, and this was the sunnah of most of the Anbiya alayhim salam. And during this midday, they used to rest. And it's called Qaydula, kind of nap. We also have in American culture, there's something called a power nap. This is where it comes from, where you work very, very hard from the morning until the midday, and you have a power nap. That power nap completely, basically recharges you. So it's like anything in life that we use, and it needs to be recharged. Similarly, the human being also needs to be recharged. When you're working, the Anbiya alayhim wasalam, particularly Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, when the time of Tahajjud, he used to get up, and then he would just lie down for a few minutes before Fajr, and then have Fajr Salah, and then immediately start working with the effort of da'wah, with the effort of teaching, all the way until midday. A very difficult job, very difficult work. And then at midday, he used to rest, this power nap. This is a sunnah. And we should also try and get into this sunnah. It's a very, very beautiful, very, very efficient, and very, very useful sunnah. Sometimes we get carried away with other forms of rest and sleep, and sometimes not healthy. So Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he was resting during this power nap, Qaydula. And these Bedouins came and they asked about him. So someone told him that he's at home. And it was a Bedouin culture that if a guest comes to you, and maybe you're resting or you're not ready to receive them. So the Bedouins in their culture, they used to just stand outside the house and start shouting to the host to come out. That was just their culture, something they were used to. Nowadays, mashallah, we have cell phones, so we text or we call, and at least with the text and phone call, someone can ignore you, but when the guest is standing right outside shouting to you, it's very different. So these Bedouins were standing outside shouting to Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam to come out, calling him to come out. Now Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, he woke up and he went and he showed them hospitality, had discussions with them, whatever, attended to them. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala revealed verses relating to this situation. And it's kind of a lesson for all of us also. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in ayat number 4 of Surah Al-Hujurat, إِنَّ الَّذِينَ يُنَادُونَكَ مِنْ وَرَاءِ الْحُجُرَاتِ أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Those who are calling you outside of your rooms, which was the houses of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, the simple rooms, those who are calling out to you and asking you to come out of your house like this, أَكْثَرُهُمْ لَا يَعْقِلُونَ. Most of them don't have aql or common sense. They should not have done this, even though that was their culture. But Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He's kind of in a sense reprimanding them and also telling all of the believers that this is a very, very bad habit. And if it is in any culture, that we should not adopt this type of habit. This goes against character, against akhlaq. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala further says in the next ayah, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ صَبَرُوا حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُ وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ. If they had just been patient and waited just a little bit, حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ, until you came out to them. As a qaylula is not very long, a power nap is hardly 20 or 25 minutes. Person gets up, makes fresh wudu, time for dhuhr salah. They couldn't even wait those few minutes. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَلَوْ أَنَّهُمْ صَبَرُوا, if they had only been patient, حَتَّى تَخْرُجَ إِلَيْهِمْ, until you came out to them, لَكَانَ خَيْرًا لَهُمْ, that would have been much, much better for them. وَاللَّهُ غَفُورٌ رَحِيمٌ, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is very forgiving and He's merciful. He's oft forgiving. He forgives over and over, and He's very merciful. Which means that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala did forgive them. But as a lesson for us mu'mineen and believers, is that if we know somebody is resting and they have their own time, then we should not disturb them and force them to come out if it's not something important. Especially if it's not something important or something very urgent. Even very urgent, we should kind of let them, give them some time, some, beforehand that we're coming. Also, this is if we go to visit anyone. We shouldn't just show up at their door and knock. Even family members. In some cultures, people just show up at the door and knock on the door. This is not the way. This is not what our deen teaches as far as akhlaq and character is concerned. You're visiting the person. Maybe they're not ready to have guests. Maybe they also have their own life. They have no previous knowledge that you're coming. And you just show up at their door, knock on the door, that we're here. We should not do this. You should give them beforehand. Give them ample time to prepare. Ample time to get ready. Send some kind of message. It was the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam that whenever he used to travel out and he would come back, generally he used to avoid, if he was going home and there was someone at home, he used to avoid just coming in like that, especially at night time or something like this. Generally, he used to return from his journeys in the morning time. And he would send a message before. He would kind of give them a heads up. He would either go himself, just give a kind of knock and say, I'm here, I'm coming, I'll be back, Then they would have time to get ready, or he would send a message. Some young child or someone, send them and let them know that they have come back or that he has come back. This is the beautiful akhlaq of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. That he always used to send a message before he just showed up. Sometimes person comes back from a journey. The family is not expecting, so the house is not clean. There's nothing cooked. Nothing is fixed. The family isn't ready. Person walks in. Where's the food? Where's this? So you didn't tell us you were coming. We didn't even know you were coming. Sometimes you also want to come back. The family has their own plan that, okay, when he will come back, we'll prepare this and we'll prepare this, or we'll do this and we'll do that. They kind of have a small little protocol ready for the person to come back from a journey. Without giving them a heads up, you show up. This is not from akhlaq. And sometimes then people get upset. That why wasn't this done? Why wasn't that? Why are you upset? You never give them a heads up that you were coming. So there should always be some kind of, especially nowadays, mashallah, we don't have any excuse. We have cell phones. You can make a phone call. You can send a text message. You can send a WhatsApp. Even if you go a little bit back in time, you can even send an email. We used to have that. That used to be a big thing back then, you know. You can send any kind of message, so many different ways to send a message before you show up at the door. Give them a 10-minute heads up, 20-minute heads up that you are coming. And this is something they can prepare, at least something for you. You're coming in as a guest. So this is something that we should always try to keep in mind. Also, as family members, we visit family. You don't just show up at their door. Or the children visiting their parents, or the parents visiting the children. You don't just show up at their door. Say, we're here. Let us sit. There should be some courtesy. There should be some heads up. Maybe they're resting. Maybe they've had a long day. Everybody has their own conditions. Maybe they're tired. They're resting. Other things they're doing. You show up. They're not in a condition to even see guests. And you show up at that time. You just bring more burden on them. That is why from akhlaq, from character, and looking also even at the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, you should give some kind of heads up. And also, even in the house, someone is resting. And we know that they're tired, they've been working. You should let them rest. If there's not something urgent, even if it is urgent, best to try to deal with it before you have to disturb them. It's kind of a warning for all of us that do not disturb someone's rest. If they're genuinely tired. It should not be that, mashallah, they're always sleeping day and night. They say, oh, we heard that we should not disturb their rest. And this person is sleeping all the time and there's never a time where they're working. Then obviously, but we're talking about a situation where someone is genuinely tired. Don't just walk in on them, especially if it's something that is not important. This is from the akhlaq of what the Quran teaches us. This is from the akhlaq and the character of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam. And we should be very, very careful and very, very mindful of this. Sometimes people take it very, very offensively. People consider it as something very bad, that why these people are doing this. So we should always give some kind of heads up. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and give us the tawfiq to practice His deen. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ. Inshallah, we'll read a hadith of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. نحمده ونصلي على رسوله الكريم أما بعد عن أنس رضي الله عنه أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال لا تقوم الساعة حتى لا يقال في الأرض الله الله. وفي رواية لا تقوم الساعة على أحد يقول الله الله. رواه مسلم. كما قال عليه الصلاة والسلام. This hadith is in Sahih Muslim. This hadith is in Sahih Muslim. عن أنس رضي الله عنه, Sayyidina Anas رضي الله عنه, he narrates, أن رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم قال, that Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, لا تقوم الساعة حتى لا يقال في الأرض. The day of judgment will not happen, or the day of judgment will not be established so long as there is even one person saying on this earth, Allah, Allah. Which means even if there is one person on this earth saying Allah, Allah, so the day of judgment will not happen, will not take place. وفي رواية in another tradition or another narration, لا تقوم الساعة على أحد, which has a very similar meaning, that the day of judgment will not take place, will not happen on that person. يقول, who is saying Allah, Allah. This hadith in Sahih Muslim, the muhaddithin have given a few explanations of this hadith. The muhaddithin, they have given a few explanations of this hadith, and we should try and understand these explanations. Is that, first of all, doing dhikr of the name of Allah, just saying Allah, Allah, Allah. So in the ayat of the Quran, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us, وَذْكُرِ اسْمَ رَبِّكَ. Wadhkur in Arabic means mention or say. The word dhikr also means dhikr, doing mentioning over and over repeatedly. Wadhkur isma rabbik, and do dhikr of the name of your Rabb. This statement is repeated in a few places in the Quran. Wadhkur isma rabbika wa tabattal ilayhi tabtila. It's mentioned there in Surah Al-Muzammil that mention the name of your Rabb. What is the name of our Rabb? Allah. Wa tabattal ilayhi tabtila, and basically turn yourself away from everything else, basically with full devotion and concentration. Say Allah, Allah. So one explanation is doing dhikr of Allah, Allah, Allah. Just the name Allah. And doing it with khushu', with devotion, concentration. The other meaning is that this is in relation also to dua. In our dua, so we call on Allah. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala tells us in the Quran, قُلِ ادْعُوا اللَّهَ أَوِ ادْعُوا الرَّحْمَنَ. Tell them, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ادْعُوا اللَّهَ. In the second to last ayah of Surah Al-Isra or Bani Israel, that tell them, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, ادْعُوا اللَّهَ, make dua to Allah, saying Allah, making dua. The other explanation is that doing the dhikr of Allah. And if you take all of the adhkar, Subhanallah, Alhamdulillah, La ilaha illallah, Allahu Akbar, you find the name Allah, Subhanallah wa bihamdihi, Subhanallah al-Azim, La hawla wa la quwwata illa billah, La ilaha illallah wahdahu la sharika la lahul mulku wa lahul hamdu wa huwa ala kulli shay'in qadir. All of the adhkar, they have the name Allah within the majority, most of the adhkar, most of the dhikr that we do has the name Allah. The other meaning that the muhaddithin have given is that every believer who believes in Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, the iman is in their heart. So they will take the name of Allah in multiple times in the day. Okay, a believer, a mu'min, who iman is in their heart. So throughout the day we take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in different occasions. We have the adhan, how many times Allah is mentioned in the adhan. In our salah, how many? From the very beginning, Allahu Akbar, we start our salah, all the way to the very end, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah. So throughout our salah, the name Allah is mentioned. In our ibadah, Allah is mentioned. When we sneeze, we say Alhamdulillah. When we begin our food, we say Alhamdulillah, we say Bismillah. So throughout the day of a believer, the name of Allah is taken. So this is also an indication of this hadith is that the day of judgment will not take place as long as there's a believer in this world. As long as there is a believer, a real mu'min, a real Muslim, a real mu'min in this world, so the day of judgment will not take place. Coming to the Ashratu Sa'a, the signs of the day of judgment, we are told that coming to the later signs, when we get to the Ashratul Kubra, like the major signs of the day of judgment, and this is generally a very impressive topic everybody wants to know about. But the major signs of the day of judgment, when you get to the appearance of Imam Mahdi, then the appearance of Zuhur al-Dajjal, the appearance of Dajjal, then the return of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, and then the appearance of Ya'juj and Ma'juj. So there is a kind of list of major signs that will take place, and they'll happen right after one after the other. So, there'll be Imam Mahdi, he will appear, and then during the lifetime of Imam Mahdi, the Dajjal will appear, and while the Dajjal is there, Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam will return, and then the nuzul of Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, he will come back down, and then Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam will kill the Dajjal, and then Imam Mahdi will pass away, and then Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam during his lifetime, the Ya'juj and Ma'juj will appear. So it'll be one thing after the other. After the Ya'juj and Ma'juj, so then Sayyidina Isa alayhi salam, he will leave this world. Then there'll be a long time of Iman and believers in the world, and then kufr and disbelief will start to come back. And after that kufr and disbelief, after a very long time, the sun will rise from the west. It's one of the later signs of the Day of Judgment. And when the sun rises from the west, on that day, the Batul Ard will appear. There'll be a creature that will come from Mount Safa. When we have Safa and Marwa, you do Sa'i. So Mount Safa will open, there'll be some creature that will come out. And I'm going through the signs very quickly. We have already done these signs in our series in the tafsir of the ayat of the Quran. But just quickly, when the Batul Ard will come, he'll mark off the believers and he'll mark off all the disbelievers. And then the Batul Ard will leave, and he'll do all that in one day. Then the next day, the sun will again rise from the west. And when that will happen on the next day, there'll be a smooth or a cool wind that will come, and it'll have an amazing scent with it. And the believers, they'll kind of feel a pain in their armpits. They'll kind of reach for their armpit because of the pain. And with that, their arwah will be lifted. They will leave this world just with that small pain in the armpit, and they'll leave this world. So all the believers will pass away. Then on the earth, there'll be only very wicked people. And they'll be so wicked that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will also raise up the Quran. The Quran will be taken away. Then there'll be someone who will go and he'll even break down the Kaaba. So there'll be no believers left in the world. And even the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, at that time, there'll be only old men and old women who will say that we heard this kalima, la ilaha illallah. So they'll just say it. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala put it on their tongue. And while they're saying that, the world will still continue for some time. And then the trumpet will be blown and everyone will be blown away. So the trumpet will be blown on the most wicked of people. And that is actually the next hadith. Also in Sahih Muslim. عن عبد الله رضي الله عنه عن النبي صلى الله عليه وسلم. Sayyidina Abdullah رضي الله عنه, he narrates that Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وسلم said, لا تقوم الساعة إلا على شرار الناس. رواه Muslim. That the Day of Judgment will not take place except on the most wicked of people, the most evil people. This hadith is also in Sahih Muslim. So the name of Allah, this name Allah, it is so powerful that just from the hadith of Sahih Muslim, it is clear that just by saying this name, it is so effective that the whole universal system is running. And the saying, it being said by a believer, by a mu'min. So we should make it a point in our lives to take the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Whether it is in doing dhikr of Allah, just saying Allah, 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 and it should be said properly. We should learn the proper way to say it. Sometimes we don't know the proper way and we say Allah, or we don't say the lam properly. The lam of Allah, it has to be mufakham. It has to come in with force. That is out of respect, saying this name, Allah. And doing dhikr with it, or doing the adhkar, subhanallah, alhamdulillah, la ilaha illallah, and all other forms of adhkar, whatever we know, should make it a habit to do those adhkar all the time. If not, then make a lot of dua. Also, another meaning is giving da'wah. That muhaddithin have mentioned that so long as people are giving da'wah, trying to bring people back to Islam, Amr bil ma'ruf and nahi anil munkar, encouraging good and forbidding evil, doing the da'wah, inviting people to Islam, inviting people to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. This is also one of the meanings. And when this will stop, so then adhab, punishments and calamities will happen. And we see, we're facing right now, it's the month of May, year 2020, we're facing a pandemic. This is a adhab, a punishment. Yes, for the mu'mineen and believers, it is a rahmah. but in general, what the world has been facing. Because if we check our own lives, how much da'wah do we really give? How much do we really invite people to Islam? So we have to become more serious with our da'wah. We have to become more serious in our daily adhkar, more serious in our ad'iyah, and also make it a habit to take the name Allah as much as we can in our life. There has been many different forms of adhkar or different methods that have been taken just to say the name Allah, so that we get in the habit of saying it. And we should learn the proper way of pronouncing the name of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give all of us the tawfiq to practice His deen. وَمَا عَلَيْنَا إِلَّا الْبَلَاغُ. This is actually also whatever we just spoke about is kind of also, tonight we'll be reciting Surah Al-Anbiya and Surah Al-Hajj. And everything that we just mentioned is actually the first, one of the very first ayat, the first ayah of Surah Al-Anbiya. اقترب للناس حسابهم وهم في غفلة معرضون. Okay, that the mankind has been brought close to their account and they were very heedless and they were lost in their heedlessness. So when humanity will become so heedless and so lost in their ghafla, so lost in their heedlessness that they forget Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, so then the day of judgment will take place. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give us understanding and give all of us the tawfiq to practice His deen. وما علينا إلا البلاغ. سبحان الله وبحمده سبحانك اللهم وبحمدك أشهد أن لا إله إلا أنت أستغفرك ونتوب إليك.